Warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Okay, hari ini kita akan sambung lagi sesi pembelajaran di dalam modul Computer Aided Drafting 2D. Sesi pembelajaran pada kali ini saya akan sentuh berkenaan dengan suntingan lukisan ataupun arti kata lain modify. Di bawah tool modify. Objektif adalah para pelajar seharusnya dapat memahami apakah yang dikatakan dengan objek snap, layer dan juga block. Objek snap merupakan arahan-arahan bantuan melukis yang membantu para pengguna untuk melukis sesuatu objek dengan tepat. Objek snap mengandungi arahan-arahan melukis seperti titik tengah, tangent, ketepatan lukisan, sudut tegak, titik akhir dan lain-lain lagi. Okey, yang kedua layer. Layer merupakan satu arahan yang membolehkan pengguna untuk membuat lukisan dengan pelbagai pilihan warna, jenis garisan, ketebalan garisan yang berbeza. Tujuan layer adalah untuk memudahkan pengguna untuk membuat suntingan dan mengubah suai sesuatu objek dalam lukisan dengan mudah. Manakala blok pula merupakan objek yang telah dilukis dan disimpan di dalam AutoCAD serta boleh digunakan secara berulang-ulang kali. Blok juga menjimatkan masa dan memudahkan setiap pengguna menghasilkan lukisan dengan cepat dan tepat. Merujuk pada jadual 1 adalah arahan dan fungsi yang terdapat pada objek snap. Yang pertama, dengan simbol seperti ini adalah merujuk kepada endpoint. Fungsinya adalah snap titik objek atau garisan atau lengkung yang paling akhir atau yang paling hujung. Simbol yang kedua adalah midpoint, iaitu titik tengah. Snap titik tengah objek atau garisan atau lengkung. Seterusnya simbol intersection, iaitu persilangan. Objek snap membenarkan kita memilih titik persilangan di antara dua garisan. Seterusnya, perpendicular, iaitu garisan serenjang. Snap pada garisan serenjang pada satu garis. Garisan serenjang merupakan satu garis yang bersudut tepat dengan sudut 90 darjah dengan satu garisan yang lain. Seterusnya, center point, iaitu titik tengah. Snap pada titik tengah garisan atau bulatan sesuatu lengkung. Simbol yang seterusnya adalah tangent. Snap pada titik tangent kepada bulatan elips atau arka. Simbol kuadran. Snap pada titik kuadran pada bulatan. Kuadran bermaksud sukuan. Maksudnya terdapat 4 sukuan di dalam satu bulatan. Simbol seterusnya adalah nearest. Snap pada titik yang paling hampir dengan garisan, bulatan atau point. Dan akhir sekali adalah simbol node. Snap pada titik objek tersebut. Seterusnya, layer. Contoh berikut menunjukkan satu lukisan pelan bentangan elektrik. Lukisan pelan bentangan tersebut menggunakan 4 layer, iaitu layer kosong, layer pelan bentangan, layer simbol dan layer template. Layer pelan bentangan dan setiap layer-layer lain telah ditetapkan warna yang berlainan merujuk kepada jadual layer di sebelah kanan. Ini adalah menunjukkan jadual layer lukisan elektrik. Setiap layer menunjukkan color yang berlainan dan kita boleh set seperti ketetapan jadual berikut. Berikut adalah kaedah untuk mengaktifkan layer. Yang pertama, menggunakan kaedah klik button format, layer, enter. Dan yang kedua menggunakan koma line, type, perkataan, layer. Bagaimana kita hendak menambah ataupun mencipta new layer? Klik pada button new layer. Tertingkap layer akan terhasil seperti rajah di atas. Merujuk kepada paparan tertingkap layer, berikut adalah arahan dan fungsi-fungsi yang terdapat di dalam layer. Status. Fungsi adalah menunjukkan status layer. Sekiranya status itu bertanda hijau right, menunjukkan layer adalah aktif pada ketika itu. Name adalah nama layer. On, arahan menunjukkan sesuatu objek atau garisan diubah suai atau disunting. Arahan freeze membekukan objek atau garisan objek supaya tidak dapat diubah suai. Walau bagaimanapun, garisan objek tersebut masih kelihatan di dalam lukisan. Lock. Lock ni dia macam bentuk mangga, kunci. Arahan lock adalah untuk menunjukkan layer tersebut telah dikunci. Oleh itu, layer tersebut tidak boleh diubah suai atau disunting. Layer tersebut masih boleh dilihat dan dicetak. Color. Color adalah warna garisan yang kita telah tetapkan mengikut layer. Line type adalah jenis garisan. Line weight adalah ketebalan. Dan akhir sekali, plotting untuk mencetak. Berikut adalah kaedah untuk create new layer ataupun create name. Mencipta nama baru bagi setiap layer. Nama asal adalah, default name adalah layer 1. So, kita nak ubah kepada latihan 1. Para pelajar perlu double klik dan type nama baru. Nama baru akan terhasil mengikut kesesuaian dan kehendak lukisan. Setelah kita mencipta nama layer tersebut, kita boleh pilih jenis color di ruangan toolbar color. Pilih warna-warna yang kita kehendaki mengikut arahan sesebuah lukisan. Kemudian enter. Seterusnya, untuk menetapkan line type bagi new layer yang telah kita buat, kita cuma select di ruangan line type. Pilih line type yang kita kehendaki dan load. Line type baru akan terhasil. Di dalam rajah di paparan menunjukkan button load and reload line type. Kita boleh memilih jenis-jenis line type yang terdapat di dalam fail komputer tersebut. Boleh select dan load. Seterusnya, klik OK. Begitu juga dengan line weight. Sama kaedah. Selepas kita pilih type zigzag line type, so kita tentukan line weight, iaitu ketebalan. Boleh pilih di dalam tool box ni terdapat jenis-jenis ketebalan setiap garisan tersebut. Sekiranya para pelajar hendak memadam atau menghapuskan sesuatu layer, cuma select ataupun tekan button delete. Layer akan terhapus. Block. Block reference akan digunakan untuk memasukkan blok ke dalam lukisan yang lain. Apa-apa sahaja blok yang telah dihasilkan boleh diimport dan dimasukkan ke dalam lukisan atau folder yang lain. Dengan menggunakan kaedah blok juga, ia dapat menjimatkan masa bagi menghasilkan sesebuah lukisan dengan lebih tepat dan cepat. Block definition. Di dalam gambar rajah paparan menunjukkan rajah block definition. Apa yang ada pada block definition? Yang pertama, name. Adalah nama blok yang akan dihasilkan. Pick point. Untuk memilih titik rujukan pada objek. Select objek. Memilih objek secara keseluruhan. Setting. Untuk setting unit objek. Dan akhir sekali description adalah penerangan mengenai blok tersebut sekiranya ada. Create block definition. Langkah yang pertama, ciptakan name ataupun create name bagi blok yang kita nak buat ni. Kita bagi nama MCB di sini. Yang kedua, pick point. Kita tentukan base point kita di sini. Seterusnya, langkah yang ketiga, select objek secara keseluruhan dan klik kanan. Dan langkah yang kelima, convert ke block dan OK. Blok baru akan terhasil di dalam paparan block create. Bagaimana pula kita nak menginsertkan sesuatu blok yang telah kita hasilkan? Langkah yang pertama, daripada menu toolbar, klik insert block. Lukisan blok yang telah kita hasilkan tadi akan terpapar dan kita cuma perlu klik OK. Berikut adalah slot tayang video yang saya perolehi daripada sebuah internet. Semoga para pelajar dapat menonton dan memahami. Sekiranya terdapat sebarang persoalan boleh merujuk kepada guru dan selamat menonton.
So, if you have got this, something like this, instead of icons if you find letters, then I suggest you to right click on any of the icon and click on use icons. So in this way you can switch between icons and letters. So whichever way you prefer, apply it. Now in this tutorial I'm going to tell you about snap mode, grid, ortho, polar, object snap and object tracking. So these are the modes which we are going to learn in this tutorial. So I'll start with the grid mode. Now here in this screen you can find a background grid. So you can turn this grid by clicking on this grid icon. So click on this grid display and it will turn off. You can also turn on or off using the F7 key. This grid is an imaginary graph made into your AutoCAD window. By default, this grid has got 5 blocks horizontally and 5 blocks vertically. You can change this setting by right clicking and going to setting. Once you go to setting, you will find here major line every 5. So change to 6, OK, and then you'll find that the grids are now replaced with 6 blocks horizontally and 6 blocks vertically. You can also change the spacing of this grid. Right now each block of the grid has a length of 0.5 unit and a width of 0.5 unit. Right click on the grid, go to settings, and now you can change this to 1, and each block will have a spacing of 1 unit now. So now each block is having a length of 1 unit and a width of 1 unit. I'll go back and change it to default value, that is 0.5. Let's look at the snap mode, but before going to snap mode I'll make an object, preferably a triangle. Now if you make a triangle using the normal mode, you'll just be able to make it comfortably without any problem. But once you click on the snapping mode and now go to line, then you'll feel a strange behavior with the cursor. The cursor only snaps at the corner point of this grid. So once you click on the snap mode, you'll find that the cursor only snaps at the corner points of grid, and that is what a snap mode is for. So once you click on snap mode, you'll be able to snap only at certain points on your screen, on your drawing area. Now you can control where the snap point goes. Right now the snap point is snapping at an interval of 0.5, that is at the every corner point, at the every crossing point of this grid. Since the grid is spaced at 0.5 vertically and 0.5 horizontally, and snapping is also set to 0.5 and 0.5, so it's snapping exactly at the intersection point. If you change this value, it will snap at that distance. So for example, I have changed this value to 1 unit. Now line will snap at the distance of 1 horizontally and 1 vertically at the every distance of 1 unit. So now let's go to this, and then you can see that it's skipping 2 grids at the same time. So it's snapping but at the interval of 2 grids. Okay, so now I'll just go to settings and change it to the default value of 0.5 to make things more clear for you. Now I've changed it. Okay, so let us turn this snap mode off and this grid mode off as well, and I'll just erase this thing. So now let's move on to other status toggle tools. So the next one is ortho mode. So let's select line tool and make a line, a normal line. So right now we can make a line along any direction. Now turn on the ortho mode and try to make a line again. Now you can see that you can only make a line along horizontal or vertical direction. You cannot make an angular line using ortho mode. Although you can use ortho mode to draw these type of line, but still you can snap. Once you snap at any point, you can make a tilted line, but only if you can snap to a certain point. Otherwise you will only be able to make horizontal or vertical line using the ortho mode. Okay, we're done with this. Now let's turn the polar tracking on. As soon as you turn polar tracking on, ortho mode will be turned off automatically, and the vice versa is also true. Now you can make a line along any direction, but if you'll make a line along horizontal or vertical, you'll find this green tracking vector. Now this green tracking vector tracks along every 90-degree interval. So here it is at the angle of 270 degree, 0 degrees, 90 degree and 180 degree. Okay, so this is because we have turned 90 degree on polar tracking. Now right click on polar tracking, and here you can see that it has been turned on at 90 degrees. Now let's change it to 30 degrees, and then you'll see that this polar tracking will appear at the interval of every 30 degrees. So that is 30, 60, 90, 120, 150 and then 180, and similarly it goes on at the interval of every 30 degrees. Now you can enable this polar tracking at certain angles which are specified here, but you can also specify your custom angle. For example, here is a custom angle which I have specified, that is 26 degrees. So now let's specify a custom angle. For that, go to settings. Now here is a custom angle which has already been defined, so let's delete it. Now I will specify a custom angle, so I have clicked on this additional angle and click on new. Now I want to snap it at the angle of 17 degrees, at the angle of 17 degree. So click on 17 and then OK. So go to line, make a line. Now once you just turn this line, it will track the angle of 17 degrees. So using this you can make lines at a certain tracking angle. Now let's move on to the next status toggle, that is object snapping. So object snapping is basically one of the very important tools in AutoCAD. You cannot work without using object snap in AutoCAD. It is indispensable AutoCAD tool. Now suppose you want to make a rectangle using line command. Now let's go ahead and make a rectangle using a line command, and I'll turn this object snapping off. So here we are, I made this rectangle up to this point. Now I just want to join this point to this. Okay, I don't care about the angle. Let's make it a quadrilateral, and I just want to join it with this. So I have joined it like this. I tried my best to join it, But now let's zoom it. Once you zoom, you'll find that it has not joined to this point, the desirable point, and it won't join as long as object snap mode is turned off. So you need to turn on object snapping. Once you click on object snapping, and then let's make it, and you'll be able to snap it. So now you'll go to this point, and then you'll see a box with the endpoint marker, and it will automatically attract towards that point, and it will exactly snap at that point. So object snap is basically used to snap lines or other object geometries, AutoCAD geometries, to certain points, certain grip points or certain anchor points. Now here we have certain anchor points. On this line we have 3 anchor points, the endpoints and the midpoint. Now let's select line and let's move it to the point here. Here you'll see that it snaps to the endpoint. Here also it snaps, and once you go to the mid of this, it will snap to the midpoint. On a circle, you'll find that it snaps to the center. Also, it has got 4 quadrants. These 4 quadrants, and it snaps to those quadrants as well. Similarly, in case of rectangle or a polygon or a polyline, it snaps to all the anchor points, and you can draw lines or other geometries from those snapping points. Now, but still you can turn these snapping points on and off. Now, for example, in this circle, I don't want to snap to the quadrants. Once I move close to the quadrant, I find that there is a quadrant. Now I don't want to snap to quadrant. So right click on this, and here you will find this quadrant option. Just click on this quadrant, and now let's move on to this. You won't find any quadrant here. If you turn off the center, it won't snap to the center. So right click and turn off the center. Now go to the center, and there is no center. You cannot snap. So right click and turn the center on, and now you can snap to the center. Okay, so now let's look at some of the points which you find on this object snapping. Endpoint, you know, endpoint is the endpoint of any line or polyline or arc. So here we have 2 endpoints. Now midpoint you know, center you know, and the quadrant means the 4 corners of a circle. Now after that, node denotes these points. So now we have made these 3 points. Now if you move your cursor close to these points, you'll see that it doesn't snaps to these points, although we have made it. Now right click on this and turn node on, and then now if you'll move close to this, it will snap to these points, and this is what a node is. Now intersection is the point which is formed by the intersection of 2 objects, be it a line, circle, arc, or anything, any AutoCAD geometry. Now let's go to line and move your cursor close to this, and here you will find the intersection, because these 2 entities intersect here. Also you'll find the same criteria here. Here also it's intersecting, so you'll find this intersection point. But if you'll turn intersection off, you won't be able to find it here. So here it's indicating this midpoint, and here you won't find any points. Now the next is extension, and as you can see that extension is turned on, so let's turn it off. Now let's make an aligned line. Now if I want to make a line that exactly follows this line, I cannot make it without extension. Now I'll click on this and I'll try to track this. No, it won't track. It won't go exactly as per the geometry of this original line. Now let's turn on extension, and now let's try to make this. So now click on this point, and now once you'll just, and now you can see that here we find an extension, and now it's tracking exactly along the geometry of this line, and it's following the same curvature which this original line is. So once you turn the extension on, you can follow the curvature of your original line or even an arc. So here we have an arc, and now if I just want to extend this arc, now click on this grip, and now here you can see that I can extend it exactly along the curvature because extension is turned on, else I won't be able to do this. Okay, and now all the rest points are quite self-explanatory, and I encourage you to experiment with these, and if you find difficulty with any of these points, let me know in the comment box and I'll clarify your doubts. Now let's look at the last status toggle for this tutorial, and that is object snap tracking. So for object snap tracking, I am not going to erase all of these things, but okay, I'll erase these nodes. Now if I just want to make a rectangle, my previous example, okay, now here, and I just want to make this line exactly equal to the length of this line. I need to know the length obviously in that case, but if I don't know the length, then there is nothing that I can do except for tracking this point. So now let's go to this point, but don't click it, and then track this point, and you'll find a green tracking vector that appears. Now as soon as you'll come to this point, you'll see that the horizontal tracking vector also appears, and now you'll be able to complete your rectangle quite easily. But now let's turn this object snap tracking off and try to repeat this rectangle. Go to line tool, make a rectangle, and now let's go to this point, but don't click it, and try to track it. Okay, I'm trying to track it, but there is no green tracking vector. No, it won't appear because we have turned this thing off here. Now click on this object snap tracking, and now go to this point, but don't click it, and now track it, and there it is. We have the green tracking vector, and now you can make it easily. So this is what an object snap tracking is, and it has got the same points which you have seen in the object snap, and if you turn any point off here, it will turn off here as well. So these are all the similar points. Now I'll show you a very good example here. If you want to make a circle at exactly center of this rectangle, you can use object snap tracking for this. So now I'll select this circle and I'll go to the center of this line, but I won't click on this. Now track this point and go down. Now go to the left or to the right, and don't click on these points, and track it towards left. As soon as you'll come to this point, you'll see two tracking vectors, horizontal and vertical. Now click, and now here it is. We have the circle exactly at the center of this rectangle. It is exactly snapping at the center, and you are not supposed to make any reference lines or anything else to make this. So this is how you're going to use object snap tracking. So this was all in the status toggle, and in the next tutorial I'll discuss all the remaining status toggles, most of the status toggles at least. So see you in the next tutorial, and if you have any doubt, please let me know in the comment box, and please do like and subscribe if you find my tutorials useful. And as always, thanks for watching.
Okey, video yang kedua adalah menunjukkan kaedah bagaimana untuk mencipta dan memasukkan blok dalam sebuah
and modify your
lukisan.
drawings using blocks and all the functionalities that are included in a block. So basically, a block is a drawing component that you can use repetitively. That means whenever required, you can call a block and use it. As you can see on the screen right now that I have many instances of this object. You can call it a window. All these windows are made with blocks. So the biggest advantage a block gives over a normal object or a normal copy paste is if you'll edit any one of the instances of this block in block editor, then all the windows will update simultaneously. So you don't need to manually update all the blocks, all the windows. Just you need to update a single one, and all of them will be updated. So that's one of the biggest advantage a block gives over a normal object. So we're going to look into that and how you can use a block to modify your drawing, or how you can include and make a block in your drawing. So let's get started. I'll start from a new drawing. So I'll go to new and start your drawing. Now on this new drawing, let's select a rectangle and a circle. So I've made this drawing, a simple drawing, and I'll try to convert these two objects into a block. Right now you can see that this is a circle and this one is a rectangle. Both are separate. For making block, you can go to this block panel on home ribbon, or you can go to insert ribbon and block definition panel. Here also you'll find create block icon, and here we have this create block icon. You can also write B for block on command line and press enter, and your create block definition dialog box will appear. Now on this dialog box you can see that the first section is for name, so I'll specify a name and I'll enter A as its name. Now the second panel asks for point, so now you need to specify the base point for this block. So click on this pick point. This window disappears for a moment and specify a base point. Right now I am specifying this lower left corner, so this point becomes the base point, and all the coordinates of this point, x, y and z coordinates, will be mentioned here. You can also manually type the coordinates in these boxes, but that would be a little troublesome for you, so that's why I selected pick point. Now let's go to select objects. So now we'll select all the objects from which we want to make blocks. Right now we only have 2 objects, so select both the objects and press enter. Now you can see that 2 objects selected, so we have selected these 2 objects. So here we have now 3 radio buttons: retain, convert to block and delete, and obviously we want this object to convert into a block. So right now I'll keep this checked, convert to block, and I'll show you what retain and delete is for in a moment. So now let's move on to this. Here you'll find annotative, scale uniformly, allow exploding. Keep all of them unchecked as of now, and I'll also explain these things in a moment. Now here on this settings panel you'll see block units. Right now the unit of this block is inches, which is same as the template unit. So you can set any unit as per your requirement, or you can select unitless. If you want, you can assign a hyperlink to this block as well. So click on hyperlink, and here on this hyperlink, insert hyperlink panel, you can write web page, address of a web page or any other location on your system or on your PC, and once you click on that block, that web page or the file which is stored on your PC will open up. So I'm going to avoid this thing right now, but you can always select this, and I'll cancel it. Now let's go and hit OK button. So now we have created this block, and now hover your cursor over this object and you'll see it's indicating block reference. So this object is now a block. And now let's go to our block table. So here click on this insert and you'll see that here we have our block table, and the block A is inserted on this block table. So if you'll copy paste this object, click on this circle, you'll see that complete object is selected, and here is the base point. So you'll find that the grip is now present only on the base point which we have selected, and if you'll copy this object, then you can paste it, and all the instances, they are also blocks. This one is also a block and this one is also a block. Okay, now let's go and erase this, and let's make few more blocks, and this time I'll select this object for a block. Now let's go and convert this one into a block. So I'll go to create block, write its name, so I'm selecting B, click on pick point, and here's my pick point. Now select objects, select both these objects, press enter, and now in the previous case we have selected convert to block. This time I'll select retain and click OK. Here also I'm making no change at all, and here also it's as it is, no changes. Click on OK. Now let's see what happened. Now let's hover our cursor on this, and you'll see that it's still a polyline. This object is not converted to a block, and in the previous case it was converted to a block. That's because here I've selected retain radio button. An image of this object will be inserted in our block table. So here we have this object, this block. You can insert this and you'll see that it's same, it's identical element, and this one is a block, but the object on screen is not a block. Now let's go and explore the third option. So I'll make another object, and I'll convert this one into a block as well. So go to create block and name it C, pick point, select any pick point. Now select objects, I'll select both these objects, and in this case I'll select delete. Now once you select delete and hit OK button, the block on the screen vanishes, it deletes, but this block is again inserted in our block table. So here we have this block in our block table. You can insert it anytime you want from this block table, but the block on screen, the object on screen, gets deleted when you select delete radio button. So these were the 3 radio buttons. Now let's go and move ahead to other options. So I'll go on and delete all of these blocks. If you have deleted this block, don't worry, the block is still in the block table and you can recall them whenever you want, so you don't need to worry, and this block is stored in your current drawing. So now let's go move ahead, and I'll create one more block, and Now here I have this object and I'll convert this object into a block. So go to create block and write its name 1 2 3. Select a pick point. This time this lower right corner will be my pick point, and select objects. I've selected all the objects and I'm selecting convert to block so that the object on screen also gets converted to a block. And in the previous cases, in the previous 3 blocks, I have kept these radio buttons unchecked, but in this case I'll check scale uniformly and allow exploding. Rest all remains as it is and I'm not changing annotative. So I've checked scale uniformly and allow exploding, and let's see what these options are for, and click OK. So here we have this object 1 2 3 1 2 3 added to our block table. It's converted to a block with no visible changes. But stop, let's see what the change it made. So I'll go and delete this, and now I'll try to insert our blocks. So I'll go to insert block and insert our previously made block, which was A. Let's insert A. But instead of inserting it from here, from this block table, I'll go to more options. Now click on more options, and there you'll find that we have much more options of inserting this block. So now the first option is for insertion point. You can see here that the name of block is 1 2 3. You can change the name. So let's go and change it to A because we want to insert A. And here you can see the preview. Now the first panel shows insertion point, and is specify on screen is checked. That means you need to specify a point on screen where you want to include that block. If you uncheck it, you can specify the coordinates of that insertion point, but I'll keep it checked. Now the next option is the scale. So here right now you can see that the scale for x-axis is 1 units. That means the original block, the original dimension of blocks will be retained. Now let's go and insert it and click OK. And here is our original block. Okay, so let's go again, insert and select more options. Now here I'll change this scale to 2, and you'll see that these options change when I change x, scale along x-axis. But if you want, you can click on this uniform scale radio button, and now you can scale them non-uniformly. So now here I have changed the scale to 2 units. Let's keep it at 1 unit, and we don't have any z-axis, so changing z scale will make no difference to our drawing. So I've changed the x scale factor to 2, y I've retained it. Now click on OK. Oops, what happened to our drawing? This was the original block, and here's the distorted block. Actually the length across along x gets doubled because we have increased the scale along x-axis, and that was 2. But in case of y, it retained, and it was 1, and it is 1 here in this case. So you can actually deform our original block. You can deform it if you have allowed it initially. Now let's go and repeat this process with the block which we have created in the end. That was 1 2 3 block. So you can obviously insert this block from that block table, but now if you want to insert it from more options, and there you will find that uniform scale option is not activated and you cannot change this. So if you'll change the scale of this object to 2, then y and z scale factor will change automatically, and you cannot control them individually. Now let's go and add it, and you'll see that the whole block gets bigger. It gets twice when compared with original block, and you cannot scale them along x and y axis separately. So that's the difference which it makes. If you'll keep scale uniformly checkbox selected, you can scale it uniformly only along x, y and z, and if you'll uncheck it, you can scale it along different axes as well. Now there was one more checkbox that was for allow exploding. So as you have noticed that in the previous cases, in the previous blocks, now let's go and delete this one also, this distracts us. Okay, and now let's drag it here. So now here we have these 2 blocks. This was the previous block in which allow exploding was unchecked. That means this block cannot be exploded. And what explode does, if you'll explode this block, it will convert this block to its original components. So now let's go and try to explode it. For exploding, I'll select this block, press X in my command line, and now press enter. and there you'll see that command line says one could not be exploded, and hover your cursor and you'll see it's still a block. You cannot convert it into a normal object. Now let's go and try to explode this block. Click on this, write X and press enter, and now let's hover your cursor, and here it is. The block is converted into its individual components. All the three rectangles are now separate, and this object is no longer a block. But don't worry, the block is still in the block table. So since we have allowed exploding in the second case, in this case, in the case of this 1 2 3 block, the block is exploded and we can explode it, convert it into a simple object, but in this case it cannot be exploded. That was the difference. So I hope you understood all the points, and if you have any doubt, please let me know in the comment box, and in our next tutorial we'll look at editing blocks and redefining blocks and writing blocks. So all those settings we'll look into next tutorial. Thanks again for watching.
Okay, kita dah sampai ke penghujung. Sekian saja untuk kali ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera.